Hey. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, as you can see, on Wednesday. So here we go. This is Algebra Notes for 8-1 on sequence notation. So a sequence is just a discrete function whose domain is a subset of the integers. Woof, that's a lot of big words. So we're going to pick that apart here. So first off, discrete. There's a lot that has to go into discrete. I don't know why I'm yelling, but I feel like I'm yelling. But the big thing that this is my life, guys. This is my life. Oh, okay. So discrete. The big thing that you want to know about discrete is that, bless your soul for being patient with me, is that when you're dealing with a discrete function, the big thing that means is that when you're graphing this, and I'm putting this right at the top of the page for a reason, when you're graphing, you do not connect the points, which is kind of crazy because your whole life you've been connecting points and you're not now. So that is what that word discrete means here for now. That's what we're gonna focus on. Discrete means that when you're graphing it, you're not connecting the points. You have some practice problems like that. So discrete function, function passing that vertical line test, whose domain talking about those x values. Another name for x values when you're talking about your function, those domains or those x values are your inputs, what you're putting into. X is what you're plugging in and you're finding that y value. A subset. Subset is just, if you have a set of something, a subset is just a smaller part of that larger set. So like if you talk about, the set of integers, which I guess let's jump there first. Okay, computer. My computer's been awful today. So integers, hopefully you know what integers are. Integers are your positive and negative whole numbers with zero. Because, zero is neither positive or negative. So if you have a set of numbers like the integers, where you're talking about all the positive and all the negative numbers and zero, a subset of those would just be the positive ones, that's part of the set. So a subset is, let's switch colors, is a smaller part of a larger set. Yeah. Smaller part of a larger set. Okay, so a sequence. So a sequence is a subset, is a smaller part of a larger set, which basically just comes down to the fact that a sequence is, I have not used pink yet. A sequence is really just, AKA, an ordered list of numbers. An ordered list of numbers. Boom. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an ordered list of numbers. That's all a sequence is. Just here. I don't know. Can't get comfortable. All right. So talking about a function. So in these lists here, the numbers in the list. So the numbers in the list are called, they have fancy names because gosh forbid we make things easy. So the numbers in these lists are called terms, or you might hear elements. So if we're talking about the terms in a list or elements, same exact thing. So we said it's a function. A function where, that input, talking about those x values, output, talking about your y values, where your input is the terms place. in the list. So like if the input, if that X value is 1, then that would mean that that piece is the first one in that list. If the X value was 2, it would be the second one in the list. And your output, which we'll do in blue, your output is the actual number in the list. So for example, a lot in this unit, we're not going to be using X because we've been using X for too long. So we have got to switch it up. So instead of X a lot, we're going to be using now N for our input. So if you have something like N is equal to 4, that would mean, like we were talking about, it's the fourth term in the list. That's what we mean. And then the output is whatever that number actually is. It's not always going to be the same. You know, the list might not just be 1, 2, 3, 4. It might be something different. Okay. This is a lot. There's a lot of intro stuff here for these sequences. Oh, I'm stuck. Okay, so once upon a time ago, you know, we had equations and we used things like, let's sidebar real quick for a sec. We had things like y equals, 2x plus 4. And then we made your life super difficult by turning it into function notation. So instead of using y, we replaced y with that f of x. Right? These two things, same exact thing. All they are is just written differently. Just like, 1/2 and 2/4 are the same exact thing. Let's even go this one. Same exact thing, 1/2 and 5/10. Same exact thing, just written differently. So here we're throwing a whole nother piece into the mix here. We're going to be throwing in what we are calling sequence notation. Bloop, bloop, blah, blah, blah. So function notation, this time though, instead of using f of x or h of t like we're used to, we're going to be using, like I said, n for our input and a as our y value. So for function notation, we've got something like a of n, right? That's pronounced a of n. Not multiplication. Remember, that does not mean a times n. That's very, very different stuff going on here. Okay, so now there's this new sequence notation. This is the piece that's new. Instead of seeing a of n, we're going to see things like a, and this little lower, it's called a subscript. It's like an exponent, but like lower instead of higher, called a subscript. And that's pronounced a sub n. Sub coming from, as you guessed, subscript. S-C-R-I-P-T. Boom. Okay, so now again, we're just going to be going back and forth between a of n, that function notation, and a sub n, that sequence notation. Excuse me. Too much talking today. All right, now this little thing right here, we're going to bubble this because this is very important. If we're talking about a list of numbers, if we're talking about counting something, when I'm counting something, what do I start with? You start with 1. You don't count 0, right? You're not counting, oh, I have 0 to 1, 2, 3 apples. No, you have 1 and continue onward. Apples and so on and so forth. So what that means is that we're going to assume from this point forward that a sub 1, right? A sub 1 is the first term in the sequence unless it is otherwise stated or if you're given like a sub 0. Because obviously 0 would come before 1. But most of the time, 85% of the time, a sub 1 will be your starting piece and then you'll have to go from there. Okay, I think that is it for this section here. We'll look at example 1 all in the next video together.